Rare Book School is a demonstration of the interchangeability of parts. One day they're a student, the next day they're a lecturer. Michael Suarez is attending the Teaching the History of the Book class at Rare Book School this week, and he is this evening's lecturer. It's a great pleasure to welcome him to Rare Book School.
In 1946, writing in New York, the poet W.H. Auden penned some advice for academics. And this is what he wrote. Thou shalt not do as the dean pleases. Thou shalt not write thy doctor's thesis on education. Thou shalt not sit with statisticians, nor commit a social science. Now, Auden's advice is clearly salutary. Auden gave many good tidbits. He was an expert at the bon mot. One of the best things he ever said, which we will try to disprove this very evening, is this. Auden said, a professor is someone who talks in someone else's sleep. Now, the lights are down. You've been in class all day. Will we prove this true or false? I'm not sure. Auden said, thou shalt not sit with statisticians nor commit social science. But for the past 4 years, I have been wrestling with that database, which many of you will know, the English Short Title Catalog. And I wanted to ask some simple and some difficult questions of that database for the 18th century as part of my work as editor for the Cambridge History of the Book in Britain, Volume 5, that goes from 1695 to 1830. So I decided to undertake a systematic analysis of the ESTC for the 18th century. The ESTC, for those of you who don't know, is a record of every book published in Britain or her dependencies in any language, and a record, at least in the 18th century, of every book published in English anywhere in the world. So the first thing I had to do was determine what my method was going to be. And so I decided to take years ending in 3, and I was later on going to do all the years ending in 8. But alas, I ran out of time and, dare I say, patience. So running the ESTC and getting these records here for all imprints in the world, we immediately see a number of pretty interesting things, like this tremendous growth through here, for example. Or even the fact, strangely, that in 1703 we don't have the smallest number, but rather in 1723. Something methinks that has everything to do with the South Sea bubble and the financial crash that took place in London and in Paris and had a big impact on the Low Countries around 1720. Less capital, fewer books. But also, look how low this number is. There's a recovery, but not so great. Does this have anything to do with demographics, perhaps? For example, we know that from about 1725 to about 1728, we experienced in England the highest peacetime mortality ever recorded. Plague. So immediately just doing this, we begin to get some kind of shape as to what's happening in the book trade, albeit a very crude one, as I will emphasize. Now, I needed to take out all the non-UK publications in the colonies and so on, but I left in Ireland. And I left in Ireland because I wanted to think about the British Isles in a market. And since Ireland was so close by, and we know that Irish books were coming into the north of England, and we know that they were also going to America. I wanted to keep it in. Now, this is a very interesting story in its own right, publishing in English, not in the UK over time, but it's a story we'll need to tell on another evening, perhaps. So, after factoring out for all the bibliographical variants that the ESTC lists, and then subtracting all the geographic undesirables, I came up with a key number, a kind of baseline for every year. Here, just note that from 63 here to 73, that increase is 19%. From here to here, that increase is 15%. And from here to here, that increase is 44%. Something is happening. What are the numbers telling us? How far can we trust them? Should we pay attention to particulars or trends? What do the numbers mean? And how could we use these numbers? In the course of 4 years, I looked at 34,335 records and plotted, that is to say, recorded and then used in my calculation, 134,733 data points. Now, how much can that be trusted? Was the game worth the candle? So I wanted to analyze the record by in a number of ways, and one way was by genre. I wanted to analyze the record in terms of format. I wanted to see what it was doing in terms of length of publication and so on. But the first one we'll look at is genre here, and you'll see some of the categories that I came up with: agriculture, almanacs, biography, business and finance, children's books, entertainment, leisure and travel, history, geography, military affairs, and so on. So what I tried to do was set up a protocol for each one of these categories. But I'd like to emphasize that these are decisions that have to be made, some more arbitrary than others. You'll all understand that anything to do with history is a critical enterprise, and as you'll all remember, the word critical comes from the Greek word for the one who sits in the judgment seat. So bibliography is a critical enterprise, which it is, so too is book history, and one has to sometimes sit in the judgment seat and make determinations, not always on great data. But there they are. There are the categories. There are a number of interesting things to learn from this histogram, or, as you remember from when you were in the third grade, stacked bar graph. So each one of these equals 100%. And dare I say, with the pretty colors, we can see a little bit about what's happening to the genres. The first thing to notice immediately is what's happening to religion, philosophy, and ethics. We start out here at about 34%. We end up there at about 16%. Now, this isn't the numbers printed. It's often very hard to determine. This is only about titles. And therefore, we have to be very, very clear that this is an extremely crude measure. It takes no account whatever of edition sizes, because we often don't have the data. Nemo dat quod non habet. No one can give what he does not have. We don't know, we can't tell. Now, we know that the survival rates for religious literature are extremely low. Dean Green has done very good work on that, not for Bibles per se, but for a lot of religious Catholics, for example. John Barnard has done some very good statistical analysis on this too. So how representative is this, and to what degree can we trust the decline? Well, it seems to me the trend, at any rate, is quite clear.